I gotta be honest with you, I did not expect this miniseries to be as popular as it is. And since you guys seem really keen on me ranking the Gordon voices, I thought, why the hell not? So here it is. I think out of all the Thomas characters out there, Gordon is the one who has the most distinctive voice. Whether it's the grandpa-esque George Carlin Gordon,
Remember, Thomas, united we stand, together we fall.
the utterly bonkers Alec Baldwin portrayal,
Hey, look out! There's snow about!
or the iconically pompous Keith Wickham.
Oh, the indignity! In full steam at the platform and no coaches to pull!
Today I'm going to be ranking every English-speaking Gordon voice from worst to best. And just for some context, here are all the people that I'm going to be taking into consideration. Ringo Starr, Michael Angelis, George Carlin, Michael Brandon, Alec Baldwin, Keith Wickham, Kerry Shale, Neil Crone, Keith Scott, Robin Smith and Rob Rackstraw. So no Railway series narrators, sorry. Also, when checking all of the Gordon voices for this video on the wiki, Stephen Donald was listed, but when I searched through all of the playthroughs for the UK Railway adventures, I could not find a single clip of his Gordon voice, so unfortunately he cannot be included. And lastly, just remember that while watching this video, that everything I say in this video is simply my opinion. My opinion isn't a fact, it's just my personal preference. Anyway, let's get started.
Bro, watch this. I'm gonna stamp on your mum's legs.
Nah, they just had a gas meter fitted as well this morning.
Coming in last place is Alec Baldwin.
Because I'm a big blue engine and I know everything, I shall complain whenever I want. Ha! Huffed Gordon. Thomas isn't really useful if he's late.
I hate to say it, but despite Alex Gordon being extremely entertaining, it simply doesn't sound like Gordon to me. If you remember, I mentioned in a video recently that the reason why I don't enjoy Baldwin as a narrator anymore is because of his completely flanderized character voices. Some of them definitely work, like Bill, Ben and Caroline, but his voices for characters like James, Henry and Gordon are overly exaggerated versions of their personalities. His Henry sounds like a pathetic wimp, his James isn't particularly awful but it doesn't capture the essence that Carlin or Angelis did. And his voice for Gordon makes him sound like a total dumbass. It gives me CGI Elvis vibes from Fireman Sam. I totally understand if you like this Gordon voice because like I said, it's a very entertaining voice. But when you boil down Gordon's actual character, he's not a cartoonishly dumb sounding guy. I much prefer his season 6 take on Gordon. For all of Baldwin's season 6 faults, his Gordon voice definitely wasn't too bad.
Keep your family close, but your enemies closer. What's he doing this side, bro?
Up next is Michael Brandon.
Now this is how you pull freight cars here, Buff.
I'm bound to win any contest. The record is mine. The record is mine. Why, I do.
Michael Brandon's Gordon voice, while definitely iconic in its own way, simply doesn't encapsulate Gordon's actual personality. While Gordon can definitely be commanding, grumpy and a brute, he's also not a complete monster who sounds like he smokes 40 a day. Yeah, Brandon's main issue is that he simply sounds way too gruff. I definitely understand why Brandon would make that his Gordon voice, as from the outsider's perspective you would assume that he would sound like that, but when you actually get to know Gordon's character, you understand that there's a lot more to Gordon than that.
You know what? Making food for your boys is actually better than fucking them. Yo! Oh, Jumbo!
Next up is Rob Rackstraw.
Ah, Thomas! Yes, good to see you. Everything is okay here.
Rob Rackstraw's Gordon is just kinda serviceable to me. It's definitely not great by any stretch of the imagination, but it's also not the worst one either. It's weird because I can definitely envision Rob playing Gordon in, say, the Miller era. His tone definitely suits that era when it comes down to it. His Gordon voice does sound like Gordon, it's just not that amazing to me. I think his Gordon voice being exclusive to projects outside of the main show also kind of tampers his effect in my opinion. I personally know him best from those god-awful Thomas's birthday wishes shorts from the Thomas channel a couple of years back. Overall, he's just meh. Next up is Robin Smith.
Hi, I'm Gordon, and since I'm the fastest engine on the island, Sir Topham Hatt has asked me to express you directly to the adventure you choose.
Robin Smith is just a pretty damn solid Gordon voice all round. Much like his voices for other characters, I feel like his lack of exposure to me as a kid, which I'm fairly sure is what most people's exposure to him was, makes me look at him at face value as opposed to with rose-tinted glasses due to the nostalgia. With that being said though, I still really like Robin Smith. There's something about his fatherly-esque tone that really hits home for me. He's not necessarily a Gordon voice that I can envision in the CGI series, but his Gordon voice, without a shadow of a doubt, has an identity all of its own. The voice itself is also just simply really good. It's a great balance of pompous and grandness that gives Robin Smith's take on the character a level of humanity that you don't see too often in Thomas voices. I know that might sound quite extreme given that Robin Smith only did Gordon's voice for DVD menus, but I genuinely really do resonate with his take on the character.
Happy birthday to
Next on the list is Ringo Starr.
Why should Henry have a new shape? A shape good enough for me is good enough for him. Down a mine, is he? Ha ha ha, laughed Gordon. What a joke. No respectable engine ever whistles loudly at stations. It isn't wrong, but we just don't do it.
Ringo's Gordon voice is pretty plain if I'm honest. That might sound like a bad thing, but honestly, I don't think it's that bad at all. To me, Ringo's Gordon voice kind of mirrors his enthusiasm with the show in my opinion. I'm sure Ringo probably enjoyed doing Thomas, but one of my main issues with his narration is that he sounds pretty bored while doing it. And what that does to some of his voices is that it makes them sound kind of bored as well. And it's because of this that I view Ringo's Gordon as a Gordon that is just fed up with life and cannot be bothered anymore. I know that sounds like a stretch, but I just can't help but see that whenever I watch an episode from season 1 or 2 with Gordon in it. I totally understand if you don't like his Gordon voice, like, I really do, but there's just something about Ringo's monotone narration that translates really well into Gordon's pompous nature and the amount of shit he gets himself into in season 1 especially.
Obviously, we need lots and lots of water. Oh, by the way, yeah, I got this from the Lucky Man. And this pilot app, because obviously my dad's in the RAF and that. Yeah. He's not, he's an alcoholic.
Next is Kerry Shale.
Only if he manages to find Thomas.
Do you two know each other?
Yes, Thomas, we know each other. This is my brother. They call him the Flying Scotsman.
Kerry is definitely the one who I have the least to say about. I honestly get really confused whenever I hear him and Keith Wickham back to back because of how similar they sound. I genuinely don't know what to say about him other than he's just pretty good. His singing voice isn't too bad, he stayed pretty consistent throughout the CGI series, his vocal cords were at their breaking point during the recording of that one episode from season 23 where he laughs a lot, and yeah, that's all I really have to say about him.
We ordered a tank of water? You can't do this in Africa, can ya?
What did you say?
Just making the top 5 is Michael Angelis.
I haven't time to dawdle over my appearance like fussy little tank engines do.
Trucks are no one's friend.
Ah, well, we live and learn. Never mind, little James, I'm going to push behind.
I was only trying to be useful, grunted Gordon.
Dirty or clean, I'm a famous machine.
Yeah, I'm sure you're all very surprised I didn't put him at number 1. Truth is, there's 4 voices that are better than his. Despite that though, Michael Angelis' Gordon is just fantastic. While his Gordon voice isn't as distinctive as his James or Topham Hatt voice, you can still tell his Gordon apart from say his Thomas or Percy voice. While sometimes inconsistent as he sometimes doesn't put on the pompousness as much as other times, his Gordon is still a blast to listen to. It's one of those things where he has the charisma of Alec Baldwin, but in his case he actually sounds like Gordon, so it's the best of both worlds. I have to say though, his Gordon definitely took a dip in quality after season 7. I don't know if it was the voice direction or perhaps the microphone they used, but his Gordon is kind of off in season 8 through 12. I find this issue quite common with Angelis in the hit era, because he tends to shout a lot with his new character voices. Take Percy and James as examples. But despite those hiccups, Angelis' Gordon is still a fantastic portrayal. Definitely one of the greats. Coming in at 4th place is George Carlin.
I am Gordon. Stop! Stop! Boko, my dear engine, save me. Those little demons, how do you do it?
George Carlin's Gordon, at least to me, is like a grumpy yet wholesome grandpa. He's got his bad days, and a lot of the time he sounds like he doesn't want to be here, but when it comes down to it, he's a teddy bear. And that to me is exactly what George Carlin's Gordon is. I think I attribute a lot of my opinions on George Carlin's Gordon to how simply fantastic George Carlin is as a narrator. I've said it before, but him and Angelis are undisputably the best Thomas narrators that we've ever gotten. They're both very distinctive in the way they tell their stories, but both of them have a level of humanity to them that no other narrator has even come remotely close to. And that is very clearly reflected in their character voices. I think my favourite episode of Carlin's Gordon is Thomas Meets the Queen. Him and Thomas's dynamic is already as great as it is, but hearing George's grandpa Gordon with Thomas's sweet nature is unbelievably wholesome. Carlin is definitely the best narrator to do Gordon. No two ways about it.
Yo, Ramel, watch this, bro.
Just making the top 3 is Keith Scott. If you don't know who he is, then let me remind you. Keith Scott was originally supposed to voice Diesel 10 in Thomas and the Magic Railroad, and during the production he also voiced some of the other characters as temp voices in the work print, and one of those voices was Gordon.
What does that sign say? And you weren't, little Thomas. I think we can take care of ourselves. James is right, little Thomas. Collecting Mr. Conductor is an important job. Important is big, and we are big engines. You are small.
Honestly, I love Keith Scott as Gordon. He's easily the most posh out of them all, and I honestly love it. He is without a doubt the most grand sounding Gordon voice. And while that may not have been intentional, as once again he was just a temp voice, I still think Keith fits the role borderline perfectly. This line in particular just sounds so perfect to me. You can tell Gordon just simply cannot be bothered with Thomas's bullshit, and he just wants to get on with his day with no fuss.
What does that sign say?
He's not as enthusiastic as the other voices, but then again that could be just down to him being a temp voice. Overall, Keith is way better than he had any need to be. He is so damn great.
It's actually not duct tape, yeah? It's T-Rex tape. Ferociously strong tape! Ah! It gets stronger the more you show it, doesn't it? Ah!
Just missing out on the top spot is Keith Wickham.
I heard that, Thomas. You know full well that tender engines are too big for shunting. Job done, job done. Now I must hurry. The express mustn't be late.
Well done, Gordon.
Thank you, Thomas.
Being the most iconic Gordon voice, you'd assume he'd probably be number 1. But there's one Gordon voice that I think is better than him, but we'll get to that in a minute. Keith Wickham's Gordon is honestly the ideal Gordon voice. He's grand sounding, has a lower tone voice, and is immensely enthusiastic. I don't think Keith's Gordon is perfect, as he can get quite ear-piercing after a while, although I don't know if that's because I've seen this godforsaken episode like 6 times. Either way though, Keith's Gordon is quite frankly amazing. I totally understand if you think he's the best, but for me, there's one voice actor whose Gordon voice perfectly encapsulates the character like no one else has. And that is the absolute legend, Neil Crone.
James is right, little Thomas. Collecting Mr. Conductor is an important job. Important is big. James is a big engine. You, Thomas, are small. Small, teeny, weeny.
For some reason, I used to think that the Magic Railroad cast was awful. The voices for the characters are atrocious, but nowadays, I cannot help but love them. Well, most of them. Once again, Gordon and Thomas are perfect in Magic Railroad in my opinion. Despite it not being canon, whenever I think of Gordon or Thomas, those voices go straight to my head. One thing about Magic Railroad which I will always appreciate is how well characterized our main characters are. And while Gordon doesn't have that much screen time, that 3 minutes that he does have, he always steals the screen. Neil Crone's Gordon completely encapsulates everything we love about classic Gordon. He prioritizes himself 9 times out of 10, he thinks of himself more highly than almost anyone else, and he doesn't miss a cue to criticize Thomas. Neil Crone's tone is also perfect in my opinion. He's not too low, but he's also not that high pitched either. He finds that perfect balance that makes his Gordon sound so much more natural compared to the other voices. A lot of the Gordon voices, at least to me, sound very manufactured, and I think that's because of how large of life Gordon's personality is, and so it's very difficult to encapsulate Gordon's character and sound natural at the same time. And the only ones in my opinion who got it right were Neil Crone himself and George Carlin. While 2 very different portrayals, they both show Gordon in a way that makes them seem so much more human than the other characters. In conclusion, Gordon is a character who I feel is a very difficult one to get just right. Many have come close, but only a couple have truly succeeded. And despite the fact that Gordon is the most consistently written character, he is definitely the most inconsistent when it comes to his voices. But I mean hey, that means there's a Gordon voice out there for everyone. So let me know in the comments who your favourite Gordon voice is. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.